When I started Lit Happens with Sid, I hadn't done anything on camera. Everything was behind the
Yep.
scenes. And my goal for the beginning of 2025 was to be on TV. Did I think it was gonna go that route? No, but I was like, we'll see what happens.
What was your all-in moment of, you kind of going through your journey, working up to where you're currently at right now?
Yeah.
What was it and why?
Trying to seal a deal just like last week. Trying to run plays and run it up like the mathletes. It's in my DNA to have hope and make a way.
All right, man. Back again with another solid episode with Perfecting Progression. This has been a solid season so far. We on episode 5 now, which is crazy. But I have another special guest, a longtime friend on. I'm glad to have her be open to coming on a platform with a lot of great things that she's doing in the community. And this episode will be called Lit Happens with Sydnee Little. I probably should have never, said the name already, but the guest I'm gonna have on today, again, a very long time, special and long time friend, but Sydnee Little is gonna be on the podcast. Thank you for being on the platform.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for curating or coordinating this space here at, what is it?
Sidetrack Books in Royal Oak, yep.
Yeah, Sidetrack Books in Royal Oak. This is a great space. This is gonna, capture a lot of the things, what you're doing currently right now with your job, but also your passion and love behind just reading books, which we're going to talk a little bit about. But yeah, I think, as we start off the conversation, I think what I want to do with the audience is kind of enlighten them on a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your background, kind of let us know like a little bit of you, you know.
So I'm Sydnee Little. So Dior and I went to middle school and high school together. So we've come a very long way. And so I'm born and raised here, went to Florida for a little bit, came back. Now I work at Fox 2 and I do a little bit of everything. So like I'm a producer behind the scenes, and then I also anchor my show That Happens with Sid. So I'm just like a jack of all trades. And so, but it's nice being back home. My family is back here. So it's just been a wild ride. So, and I'm happy to share it back with you.
Most definitely. That's how things kind of go. I'm glad that things are happening in a 360 type of way. We haven't seen each other in a long time, and before we kind of go into where your journey has taken you in these different places, let's start back off in Southfield, like I said, or like you said. Our connection is kind of going through middle school and high school, but kind of let the audience know like some of the things of the city of where you grew up at. What were some of the things like growing up in Southfield? What was the feel like? Is it any strong takeaways that you could take just from being in that community as a Southfield resident?
It was nice because I think just having like a community of like all of us going to the same school, like not living far from each other. Like back in our day, we were outside. We weren't really in front of TVs that much, and y'all were outside more because y'all play sports. But it was just like a fun community because like when I was born and raised in Southfield, but then I did live in Oak Park for a little bit. So I went to Einstein, which I know you went to Einstein, but I left after first grade.
Okay, so I got there in second grade.
So we just missed each other.
Yeah, we just missed each other. I did not know that. Where did you go in elementary?
So after that, I went to Adler. Which is
Is
right
that
here in Southfield, yeah.
Okay,
So Adler, Thompson, and then Southfield High.
Okay.
But just bouncing around, and it's so funny, like knowing like how our friends are interconnected with each other. Like people who went to Einstein that I was in classes with. And so it's just nice, like being able to just like be home and like reconnect and see how far everybody's come, because we've all taken different, routes and roads in our lives, and it's just really interesting to see.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think so. One of the things that I also wanted to ask you too, because I know you kind of took us through some of the things that we all have gone through with just the balance of, okay, so like, I'm a 97 baby. Isaiah, I think he's a 97 baby. Sydnee, I think you're a 97 baby. But the reason why I mention that is because I just seen a post, but we have a really good balance of how life was right up until technology really just kind of got crazy. So, also you mentioned kind of us playing sports. And I wanted to know a little bit more about you as far as, when going through middle school, when going through high school. I know you was a stunning scholar. You did a lot of great things in school, but kind of let us know, like, what was your hobbies during that time when you were growing up, in the community? what were some things that you identified within yourself?
Mine was reading. I didn't really like being outside. Like my mom would make me go
Why?
outside. It's bugs and it's just outside was not my thing. Like
Yeah.
she was always, let's go to the park, let's do this. I'm like, no, I'm cool. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm cool. But reading was always my thing and just chilling and then drawing.
Drawing.
So like
Okay.
I kind of do that a little bit. So those were like my two. And then like now it's progressed because like I'm into cars and you know I race cars and I do that. So it's just
You race cars? What do you mean you race cars?
I street race.
What? Can you say that? Street
I've
race.
said it on air. Yeah, street
Yeah.
race. Yeah.
Okay. What was I gonna say? So reading. Let's stick to reading real quick. So, who was that something that you was forced into?
No.
Was that something that you just happened to just love? Just how did that come along with reading?
When I was a kid, so music and reading were like my main things.
Yep.
And so like with reading, before I really knew what words were, like I would take picture books and I would go in and I would like kind of tell a story just based off the picture.
Yep.
And my parents were like, that's not what the story says. I'm like, yeah, but in my brain, like that's what I'm envisioning. And then they got me to Leapfrog. And this was like where you had like the little books and the pen. This was not the techie one that they have nowadays. So I learned how to read. And then my first chapter book was Junie B. Jones, which I learned in first grade. So they kind of taught us like getting more advanced when it came to reading. And so it just took off from there. So like I would drag my parents to Borders bookstore and I'm like, hey, I want to read. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then like that continued in high school because during the summer, really before I started driving, I was stuck in the house all day.
Yep.
So it was nothing else to do but read. So I would go through 400 or 500 something books in a day.
Okay.
Because I'm literally sitting at home reading all day.
Yep.
And then I would say like my love for reading kind of died down when I was in college because I'm like, okay, like I'm reading for school, I'm reading for class. And then
They got
afterwards,
tedious?
yeah, because I'm like, after I'm getting done reading for homework, I don't want to read for fun.
Exactly.
You know, I want to do something else.
Yeah.
And then now
Relax the mind.
I'm back into that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think, you know, one of the reasons why I ask that, because I'm gonna be honest, like when it comes to like when I think about reading and actually doing it, I know it's gonna help with me, you know, retaining knowledge or, you know, speaking out in public, but also I hate reading.
Yeah.
So I know I have to do it.
Yeah.
But I wanted you to talk a little bit about, you know, and share that with the audience around, you know, there's a lot of people out here who love books, and there's a lot of people out here who don't like the actual doing of reading. So probably talking about things that you went through, what was what am I trying to say? Pretty much what was the best practices around, because you kind of gave some already. I just, you know, I really wanted that to be highlighted around those best practices of how can you start somewhere and then work your way into like, wow, like I really found myself really, you know, loving this.
Finding a book or a genre that works for you.
That works for you.
Because a lot of times I think people like, oh, I want to read a self-help book, but that might not be what you like. A lot of times, you know, you see books on Instagram and TikTok because it's so popular nowadays. And it's like you're going with the hype. But it's like then you might not like it. So it's like finding what you like. Because reading, I know for me and a lot of people that I've talked to on my show, it's like a getaway from everything in the real world.
Exactly.
And one of the other reasons I really love it is because when I'm reading, I can envision everything that I'm reading. I've learned a lot of people can't do that. So I'm like, okay, so then when you're reading, what are you doing? Like, are you just retaining it? But like, it's like a short movie for me. So I think that's what makes it more entertaining. So like, I don't mind picking up random books. And even though my genres are like thriller and horror and romance, I don't mind picking up other ones because I'm like, I know I can envision or kind of make something out of it myself, like a mini movie. So I think that kind of helps, but then also just finding your niche, like finding an author that you like, finding a genre, and I think you'll get into it.
Most definitely. I appreciate you kind of sharing that with us. And, you know, as we transition, so kind of talking a little bit about your youth and some of the things that you like doing and, you know, going into, you know, college. So as we kind of transition and kind of go into college, so you went to, was it Oakland University? Okay, kind of walk us through, you know, when you were at Oakland, what was some of your focus around, like your degree focus? What were some of the things that you wanted to get into? Like how did that look for you specifically being in that capacity?
So I started off as a pre-med major and a journalism minor. And so when I started, I was like, I wanted to be a doctor, like an anesthesiologist. That was specifically the field I wanted to go in. But
why?
Money. I'm not gonna lie, it was because of the money. I'm like, they make well over six figures. So I'm like, okay, that's what I want to do. And then as I got more into college, I was taking a ton of like science and math classes. And then I would have like a few writing classes on the side because of course the minor isn't your major focus. So I would say like my junior year, I started thinking more about it and I'm like, this isn't really what I want to do. Like my dad wanted a doctor. So I kind of went into it for the wrong reasons, one, money, and then because he wanted a doctor, but I'm like, it's my life. Like, it's something that I'm going to have to do.
Right.
And so my junior year, I ended up taking summer classes so I could get caught up because I ended up switching my journalism to my major, and I dropped pre-med, and I couldn't have been
When did you do that? You dropped it, what, your first?
My junior year. Yeah, so okay, right before senior.
Yeah, it took a little minute before you dropped it.
Yeah.
But it's still good that you was able to identify exactly what you wanted to do, you know, for, you know, the rest of your life, or not waste time on, because I think the biggest thing on my platform really is that transitional phase. Perfecting progression. A lot of us figure this stuff out. You figure out what, like, there's many phases when you can figure things out, but a lot of us, as we are young adults, we get out of college, we begin to start to figure that out once we are done with college, trying to figure out what we're going to do for work. It's good to have that structure and understand what you wanted to do before you got out into the real world. So it's good to hear, you know, it's good to hear it from you specifically, of people that have different walks of life specifically.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, like within the Black community, we get told like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and we're living for other people, and we don't live for ourselves, and then later down the line we end up regretting it because it's not what we want to do.
Most definitely.
And like I had to have a conversation with my dad. I'm like, hey, like I'm dropping it, and he was upset, but I was like, I'm gonna be fine, because his main thing was like, I just want to make sure you're straight when I'm not here, able to help you, like you're fine, and I'm like, I'll be fine. And I'm proving that I'm fine.
And that's a good dad. That's a good dad, though. He's trying to make sure he's setting you up for the best. And I think more so just from, like you said, in the Black community, more so coming from maybe this is not what would I say? I feel like it's a good chunk or a good percentage of what I'm about to say is just, you know, athletes, sports. We love sports. Our community loves sports. So when we do, you know, when we do get to the level and we're blessed to even get to the next level to play collegiate sports, we're still gonna have a dream of like, man, I still want to make it somewhere if we can, if you have that opportunity to do so. And I think, again, not being able to really identify what your major is in alignment with career opportunities, that's really where a lot of people might go wrong as well, because they feel like we can figure it out once we get out of college, but you should be utilizing those resources within your school to let you know exactly what that pipeline might be.
And it's always like, have a good backup plan. Like, especially like, you know, in your case, like when it comes to sports, like what if you get hurt, or what if something else happens in sports doesn't work out, or you don't get drafted? Like, it's always good to have a backup plan. And like you said, if you're on a scholarship, take advantage of it, go through as many classes as you can to figure out what you want to do. So then on the back end, you're not struggling like, oh crap, well, what do I want to do with my life? Most
definitely. So so entering college, you know, so a lot, again, like how I talked about with, you know, there's different people that have different walks of life. You know, it's a lot of people in this world. So I think with what I'm getting at is entering college with, you know, Sydnee Little. What was, I guess, what I'm a hover over is kind of some challenges and roadblocks, and utilizing time correctly. So me, again, student athlete, but I would like to hear from somebody that wasn't a student athlete. What were some of your, you know, challenges and roadblocks that you can remember vividly?
I think it was kind of a challenge and a curse. Like, I was a big procrastinator. So when it came to, but it was more so when it came to like my writing classes or reading class, because I was always great at writing. And so I would have a paper due at midnight, and I probably wouldn't work on it until like 10 o'clock at night. And I have like maybe 5 to 10 pages I got to do. But I worked better when I was in that crunch time compared to like if I started it earlier in the week, that I'm gonna forget like my thought process. And so I just did better on crunch time. But when it came to everything else, I think some of my, I would say, bad habits was either not asking for help or not going to tutoring if I didn't understand something. And a lot of that fell into when it came to like the biology classes and like the math classes, because it's totally different at high school. And it's like, you don't have like extra notes that you can use, you know, when you got to take an exam and, you know, you got so many points. Like, I actually had a math class that I had to take twice, because the first one I failed by 1 point and I had to retake it. And I was like, seriously? So I think like not asking for the help and thinking that I had everything figured out myself, I think that was probably my downfall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would say with you giving out, so when we talk about a little bit about time management, how was time management for you in that space as well?
It was great because I didn't really have anything else to do. So like my freshman year, my dad was like, I don't want you to work. I just want you to focus on school. So I was like, okay. So I had a ton of time to study. I had a ton of time to do everything else. But then as I got into like my sophomore, like junior and senior year, I had my own apartment. I had work. I had other things to do. But like my grades never dropped in that regard, but it was just trying to figure out what is the best time to get homework done. So that's when I started utilizing like a planner. Because I'm like, as long as I have it written out, I can cross it off and I know I'm done with it. So that was kind of like my mode when I knew, okay, this is crunch time.
And how did a planner be effective in your life? You know, why was that important for you? And people could still use a planner, you know, even outside of school. I just kind of want to hear you talk a little bit about.
It was good because like I would have everything color coded. So I would have like, okay, on this day, this is due, because they would give us, you know, like our class assignments like the first day. So like this is kind of the plan for class for this semester. So I would like start the planner, have everything color coded written out, and then I would have sticky notes for like that week. So I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And then like just cross it off like now. And it's funny because like that kind of helps set my brain now in my adult life for like better time management and like making sure I get things done, making notes, so then that way I'm paying attention. And like now I don't use a planner, but I still utilize like other things. Like with my show, if I'm booking people, it's like my Outlook calendar. So I'm like, okay, I know I got like 8 guests this day, I have this, and then like I have, you know, like an asterisk I'll use what next to their name, so I know, okay, all their graphics are done, and keep it moving. So you just have to find a method that works for you so you can like stay on track.
Most definitely. I like that you kind of gave some insight there. And as we, you know, kind of transition, so we talked a little bit about, you know, those challenges and roadblocks and how you utilize your time more so in the in the university lane, specifically at Oakland University. So you start off as a pre-med, then you transition into journalism. Kind of walk me through, so where I'm gonna go to now. So now you kind of got an idea of what you want to get into, specifically once you graduate from college. But kind of walk us through, because myself, I'm in talent acquisition, so I understand the importance behind getting or doing or having an internship on your resume, what that shows. But kind of walk me through, what was your process like of just approaching an internship, knowing what an internship is? Like what did that look like for Sydnee?
So my I think it was like my going into like the end of my junior year into like the beginning of my senior year, I actually had a class. So like it was a requirement for all seniors. You had to have a internship no matter what your degree or major was. And so we took the class, and it wasn't actually like a physical class, but it was a credit. So then that way you knew like what days were designated for the class, those were the days that you're going to whatever your internship was. So I actually had an internship at Genesis Credit Union. And so I kind of did like the social media aspect and kind of did like, you know, their parade advertisement and stuff. So I got like the business side of like the journalism aspect. And I was like, okay, this is kind of boring. So then I ended up putting in an application for Channel 4 and Fox 2. And I did my interview at Fox 2, and it helped because my cousin worked there at the time. So I was like, okay, that looks good. And so I ended up landing it. And so I was like, I told Channel 4, like, I'm good. Like, I'm going to go with Fox 2. So when I was at Fox 2, I was supposed to do my internship as a producer, but I actually did it as a reporter. And so I worked the grave night hours, which was midnight to like 6 o'clock in the morning. But it was very eye-opening because you see sides of Detroit that you don't see during the daytime. So there were different crime scenes, there were bodies, there were, you know, different things that you see, and that kind of helped shape my form of journalism. So, you know, like I did like stand-ups where you're in front of the camera, you're talking about different things, of course, because I needed it for class. And then that kind of shaped, I'm like, okay, do I want to be a producer or do I want to be on TV? And I decided like I'd rather be a producer, because I'm like
behind the scenes,
because I like telling people what to do. So behind the scenes was more my thing.
So I want to stop and hover over graveyard ship. So essentially, what I'm gonna align that with is just the necessity or the important reps to a degree, because a lot of people, how can I put it? A lot of people are gonna look at, okay, you know, like how I told you before, even off camera, you know, Sydnee is doing very, very well, but they don't understand the journey that came behind it. Or I can see another person doing very, very well on the court or on the field, but we don't know the journey or the things that they did that we didn't see. So I kind of wanted you to touch on, you know, how did that, because you already said that the experience molded your vision in a very strategic way, and now you're doing things around having guests on a number of different things, but kind of walk the audience through why that time was so pivotal for you, and it might have been tough, but you were still able to put one foot after the other and get through it.
Yeah.
And some of the things that you came out of it.
It was definitely tough because that goes back to what we were talking about with time management, because I did my internship Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Mondays I had class starting at 8 o'clock. So I was up at 6:30 in the morning, have class from 8 to 1. I would go home, change clothes. I had to be at work by 3:30. I worked from 3 to like maybe 10 o'clock. And then I would go home, change clothes, relax for a little bit, and then leave the house by like 11:30 so I could get to work on time. So I was literally up for 24 hours at a time, like throughout the week. But that just showed that I was able to do it no matter like how hard. Like I was literally driving home, and it was during the winter, which was terrible. And like I'm driving home with the windows down because I'm trying not to fall asleep on a 2-lane road, because it was like you're literally to the point where you're nauseous because you're so tired. And so that kind of that had its own thing when it came to shaping, you know, who I wanted to be. And then like just being out in the field, because I had a great photographer at the time, and he kind of just showed me like, okay, you know, this is what we do, this is how we set up cameras. We had each other back, because you don't know who walking up on you, you know, when you in the rough parts of town, or when you at a crime scene and you are looking at family members that are seeing, you know, their loved ones on the ground, and you got to like decipher like, what can we show, what can we not show. So just that entire process just proved like, okay, you can do it. It's going to be tough. And in the news business, it's a 24-hour business. And, you know, working like that midnight to 6 in the morning, nobody wants to work that shift, but it has to be done. And I think that kind of set the foot, at least for them looking at me like, okay, she's willing to work this. So we know like she's a hard worker, and that's going to pay off down the line, which it did.
And you said, what was the internship that you took? It was being a producer?
Reporter. Well, originally it was supposed to be a producer,
and
then I ended up being a reporter.
So, okay, so we gonna still kind of touch on just kind of these transitional phases that you was able to own and still get through, and they were still pivotal, you know, within your life and professional career. But now I think this is when you took on this internship, and now you're leaving Michigan. Leaving Michigan, you're going down to Florida, and what part of Florida again?
Sarasota.
So kind of walk us through. I remember you was telling me, I think you had an option of Texas and Florida. You still wanted to kind of go the Florida route. Kind of walk us through, you know, how did that time look for you? I think you told me that you were down there for about 4 years, and you know, you were, I think you did a number of different things, but I'll let you take it. Let me stop talking.
So like I graduated college December 2019, and then when I did my internship, one of the producers that was at Fox 2 at the time knew a news director down in Florida. And so the news director was like, hey, you know, like we don't really have a reporter spot, but would she be open to producing? And I'm like, I've never done it, but okay, I can give it a try. And so they were like, okay, like by Christmas, I had the job. They were like, we're going to give you a month to move down here. So I was like, all right, Dad. So we packed up the U-Haul. We drove down within like a day and a half. And so it was very nerve-wracking at first, because mind you, being here, I had my own place, so I was used to living alone, but it's being so far away from family. And I'm like, if something happens, my dad is not a hop, a skip, and jump, you know, away from coming down here if anything, you know, pops off. And so I got into work, and so I started as a producer. I've shadowed one girl for 2 days. And then I was like, okay, well, how about, because I'm a hands-on learner. I said, how about you build me what we use is called a rundown. I said, why don't you build me a blank one, and I can go in and kind of do my own thing, get a feel for it. By Friday, which is within my first week, I had my own show. So I was like, okay, and it was different because not only am I still learning the system and how to produce all together, but then this show particularly had guests. So I had like Zooms and everything. So of course this was 2020, this was before COVID hit. And then once COVID hit, they sent all the other producers to work from home. So I was the only producer that was in-house. So I had to come in by like noon, make sure my show, which was the 7 o'clock, was done, because I had to be in the control room for all the other shows. So I would say I had like what I felt was like a year's worth of experience within my first couple months. And then I did that for about 2.5 years, and then left there, and I had I worked at another news station down there. That didn't work out just because it was in Fort Myers. I was still living in Sarasota. That hour-and-a-half drive there and back was just like, no, we're not doing this. And so I left there, and then I ended up being a 911 call taker. And then I left there because in 2023, I ended up losing my grandmother. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to help people with their stuff, calling 911, and I'm still dealing with my grief. So I worked at a dental office for a little bit, and then I saw that Fox 2 was hiring, and so I sent in my application and came back home.
And so the internship, it was with Fox 2, it was just with a different...
So it was with Fox 2 here, but they weren't hiring like
location.
people right out of college.
Yeah,
So they wanted you to like get some experience
Yeah.
and then come back, because with Fox 2, Detroit is like one of the top markets. So they want you to make sure you have experience.
Yep.
And so I went down there, got my feet wet, and then when they saw that it was me, they was like, oh yeah, we want you to come back. So I ended up coming back.
So kind of, I want you to talk about, just how did it feel being away from home? Again, I think being, used to how things are kind of ran in, your backyard, but then kind of going far away, figuring things out on your own, not having family. Like, what did that community look like for you? Was it primarily just work? Like, how did you feel just being in a space that you've never been to?
It was hard because I'm an only child. So like, it was hard that morning when I left because I had to say bye to my mom, and my mom and I are like attached at the hip all the time. And then like, I was with my dad. So I'm like, all right, we're fine. Like, we're cool. And then surely enough, when it was time for me to take him back to the airport, I started blubbering like a baby. And I'm like, oh my God. And so it did. And so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go shopping, do some retail therapy, kind of get back in the mood a little bit. And then I just buried myself in work. But my boss at the time, Jennifer, she was great. Like, she was my mom away from my mom. And I kind of like started, knowing the reporters and the other producers. So we would hang out occasionally. And, having like that friendship. But with like my boss, she was just great. And like, I remember my first birthday, which was away from home, she coordinated all of my family members to be on Zoom. And so she was like, hey, I need you to jump on this call. And I'm like, okay. And I jumped on and I see my mom, my cousin, like my bosses. And I'm just like, can I call y'all back? Because I got to go get in a call. They was like, no, this is the call. So I was like, just being able to like still be in a community like away from home. Like, she was great to kind of ease me into that transition. And then within my first 6 months, I was like, oh, okay, I got it. I kind of built a life. I'm like, we're good.
No, so that's important. I think it's really just important to hear other people that, talk a little bit about going away from home. It might be, it could be anything that takes them away from home. But when we talk about just work and trying to build a community, trying to find, sense in the things that we love to do, and then eventually, the dream of getting back home, specifically of wherever it may be, it could be anywhere. But I think what I'm getting at is you were able to lock in on a passion that you had and gradually progress and still go elsewhere and still make a footing in it. And now you're back here in Michigan. But I guess as I kind of talk a little bit about that, so we talked a little bit about the professional navigation and some of the roles that you talked about that you had down in Florida, and then a position opened up here in Detroit, and you took that on. I guess kind of so now I kind of want to talk a little bit about the process and structure now, because I think I remember you talked a little bit about the production experience on their transition. Kind of walk us through it. What did that look like when you came back to Detroit and now you're fully a full-time employee here in this market? Kind of walk us through, what did that structure look like for you?
It was brutal, I will say, because when I started, the only timing that they had was overnight. So I was back overnights, but I was like 3 to 11 in the morning. And so I was only writing. So I wasn't physically producing anything yet. So I was just kind of getting my feet wet. I was learning the system, because the system we used in Florida was totally different than the system that they use here. Process is the same in terms of like, like abbreviations that you use for stuff for like a video or, like a sound bite. That was the same. It was just the system was totally different. And so after learning that, I kind of got my feet wet. So then they were like, all right, we're going to put you on the show. So I was like, okay. So I did the weekend morning show, which kind of shaped me into being able to book people for my show now, because with the weekend morning, it's pretty much guests. So you have cooking guests, you have everything.
Whatever. It's a wide variety of just whatever.
And so like I would reach out to people, I would book that. I got into it with a couple PR people because they're like, you're not using our people. And I'm like, but there's other people in the community that we can utilize. And I think that was the thing. I'm like, once I get my foot in the door, I was always big on bringing people in from the community. It's not just about me. And that's what I wanted to do to make a difference, because there's so many other people out there that's kind of overshadowed or overlooked by like other big names or other big things. And so I did that for like...
being the bridge.
Yeah, I did that for like a couple months. And then they were like, all right, so I was like, get me off the shift. Like overnight.
The overnight shift.
Yeah, like that 3 to 11, it was brutal, especially in the winter, because you're getting up, it's cold, and it's just like, I don't want to do it anymore. So I was like, I put me back on afternoons. So they put me on afternoons, and I was just writing. And then it kind of sucked because I was balancing between the two because I was doing the weekday stuff and then I was still doing the weekend morning show. So I was like, they were like, okay, wait until we get somebody, hire somebody, train them, and then we'll put you on weekend nights.
Was you hosting these weekend morning
no,
shows?
So I
you
was
just producing.
Yep, so
right.
I was behind the scenes.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay. So then they ended up, I trained a girl, got her good to go. So then I was on weekend nights. They put me on the 10 p.m. show, which is what I do now.
Yep.
And so I have like Thursday, Fridays off. So my schedule is great. So I've literally worked all day parts. I've literally done every single show there is to do.
Yep.
And then that kind of just molded me into kicking off Lit Happens with Sid.
And that was the on-air transition.
Yeah, so like when I started Lit Happens with Sid, I hadn't done anything on camera. Everything was behind the scenes. And so we ended up getting like a new general manager in, and he's very like savvy when it comes to like making changes, what's different. And so we had like our streaming platform, and so they're like, hey, like if you have ideas, bring it to us and like let's see where it goes. And I'm sitting in these meetings and I'm like, okay, what do I like to do? I'm like, I like cars and I like books.
Yep.
I'm like, but in Michigan, you're not gonna see fancy cars in the winter. So I'm like, okay, books is probably the best route to go. And nobody else is doing an on-air book club, especially when it comes to like in the big market or on news stations. And so I like kept thinking about it and I'm like, I don't really know how to present it. I don't know, what to do. And my goal for the beginning of 2025 was to be on TV. Did I think it was gonna go that route? No, but I was like, we'll see what happens. So like December of 2025, they were like, okay, well, we'll start it off. Like I went to the boss, had a whole PowerPoint. I'm like, this is the visuals for it. This is what I'm thinking. Nobody else is doing it. And I'm like, think Oprah, but local. And he loved it. And he was like, oh, this is interesting. So we started it off as like a mini segment with one of my coworkers, Jamie Sherrod. And she reads as well. So it was like 5 to 6 minutes. And then which got me comfortable with being in front of the camera. And I was just like a guest. Even though it was like my segment, I was just like a guest on the streaming show. And then something happened back in March of this year. And one of our anchors was out. And they were like, oh, we got a spot to fill. You want your own show? And I was like, okay. And they were like, all right, we're going to give you an hour. And so I had like a couple days to book a month full of people. And it just, I didn't think it was going to take off like that.
You answered a lot of my questions over because see what I'm getting at now is just, thinking about, okay, so I said on-air transition. So I was gonna ask you, like, did you ever have any ideas or dreams of being on TV as you're producing this stuff for the other hosts that are gonna be running this stuff? So you just answered that your goal in the beginning of 2025
be on TV
was to be on TV. So within that also too, I definitely want to give you kudos just for getting things up and running and presenting your vision, the PowerPoint to the general manager. And I think the biggest thing is to think creatively, think different. We're all not gonna think the same. So that's why, you have to utilize, especially in these type of spaces, the diversity of the thinking, really, because all of us have different ways of how to drive impact in different communities or in different ways. So, and then what I really want to bring up too, so you talked about the book club. So kind of talking a little bit about the seasons. And wintertime is winter, fall time, or however that might look. It's best to kind of run or lead this vision behind amplifying reading books specifically. But you also said a hobby was cars. So has that been a thing that you think you might bring to the forefront as well, as far as like, okay, like trying to amplify that in a way? Because the way I'm looking at it, the platform that you're on is perfecting and progressing. And I'm seeing the gradual progression of producing, you behind the scenes, you got the flow of it, and now it's like, okay, we're gonna put her out in the fire, and now it's just, be on air. And that was one of your goals. So do you see yourself, kind of opening up to anything else, or are you really just trying to hammer on, book reading?
I think the book thing will probably be like my focal point because like I remember when I was thinking of the whole process, like it was a lot of nights I'm up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, like just jotting stuff down, just memories. I'm like, okay.
We did talk about that.
I'm like, geez, like, okay, this is obviously a message from God. This is what I need to be doing. And so like after I would get those thoughts out, I was fine. And then of course like the self-doubt comes like as you get closer to like the kickoff weekend, because you're like, can I do this? Is this really gonna stick? And it's like, look where we are now. Now, when it comes to cars, I don't know, because now I thought about doing things of like maybe a car show and a book drive
Yep.
together. Because, you know, like my dad has his Corvette club.
Yep.
And then like I have people that I connect with, you know, when it comes to racing. So I'm like maybe finding like little events to like
There's some
raise
creativity
awareness.
there.
Yeah.
There's
But
some
in terms of
creativity
like
there.
making it an entire thing, probably not. Because like,
Okay.
you know, like we were talking about like winter, pretty much after Dream Cruise, things kind of die
Right.
down for the most part. So I think books is probably going to be the focal point.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. And I think where I want to transition now to is just a new segment that I have on the podcast is pretty much this season's mantra is all in. So a lot of things that I've been, you know, capturing and capitalizing on with guests coming on is that all of us that kind of go through these journeys up until wherever we're at currently in life, you know, we definitely have a all-in moment, and an all-in moment doesn't really have to just be one thing. It could be multiple things that you're going all in on. So I definitely wanted to ask you, you know, with this new segment, pretty much what was your all-in moment of, you know, you kind of going through your journey, working up to where you're currently at right now?
Yeah.
What was it and why?
Hi, this is Sydnee with Fox 2 Detroit Lit Happens with Sid. And this message is for anybody who's kind of on the fence when it comes to reading, which is one of my favorite things to do, which is why I created Lit Happens with Sid. So what message I have for you is to just find what works best for you when it comes to books, whether it's this particular author, whether it's a particular genre. Just figure out what works for you, test it out for a little bit, see if you like the audio version, the Kindle version, or maybe a paperback, but never say, oh, well, I don't like reading. No, it's just because you haven't found what you're in love with yet. And once you do, you will always want to read. And then also go follow your dreams, figure out what's best for you. And if you're kind of on the fence, what I always tell people is do it scared. That's when you get the best results. So again, this is Sydnee with Fox 2 Detroit Lit Happens with Sid. I think my first all-in moment was probably losing my grandmother, because she was like the biggest supporter of any and everything that I did.
Yeah.
And I think in my brain, I'm kind of like, okay, well, how would she be proud of this new thing that I'm doing? Would she would be proud with like if I opened up a store or anything, like she would be okay.
Yeah.
But because she was very heavy in Detroit when it came to stuff, like she was in the churches, so like that was her thing. And it's funny because I feel like I'm slowly turning into her when it comes to, you know, like making people feel comfortable during our interviews and just making it like relaxed and being involved. And so I think that was it's like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Because technically when you lose somebody, that old life is gone. You're basically starting over. So it's like, okay, as I'm in this adult world, how can I kind of transition? So that was my first one. My second one was when I almost didn't want to do Lit Happens with Sid. And that's because like a couple days before I was set to kick everything off, you start, like I said, that self-doubt kicks in and you're kind of like, okay, but like I've never been on TV before. Like, am I going to be able to keep this going for like the next couple months? Like, how is this going to work out for me? Like, is this going to be a dub? But then like, am I going to be great on TV? Am I going to get like terrible feedback? Like all these thoughts start like popping in your head. But then I'm like, God wouldn't have put it in my brain or on my mental if it wasn't what I was supposed to do. Like booking these people and getting them in wouldn't be easy if this was not what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And I think that, and then just doing it scared.
Yep.
I think because like the first couple weekends, I'm kind of just like, I got to fill an hour. Am I going to be able to talk? And it's like, look at it now. So it's like, I didn't really think long term. I wasn't in the bad term of like, okay, maybe this might not stick, but I wasn't looking at the positives of it. And then it's like, now I'm booked out to September.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like just doing it scared. I think that's the thing.
I was about to say, could you drive home for the audience on doing it scared?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Doing
for
it
you?
scared is just when you not only doubt yourself, and sometimes it's not just you just doubting yourself, it's just doubting the process, your idea. It's just a lot of doubt. And then listening to like other feedback, even if people are telling you like you're doing great, but just thinking so much about what other people would think. And now I've gotten to the point, I don't really care. Like as long as my bosses are happy with it and like the viewers are happy with it and the feedback that I've gotten off of it is great, that's all I care about. And so when you start getting that self-doubt, that's just nothing but the devil. Just let it go in one ear and out the other. Don't harbor on it, because I think a lot of times we miss opportunities because we're scared to do it. And it's like, if it doesn't last or it doesn't work, okay, you can say, at least you can say I tried. But I think that's the thing. Just do it scared.
That's a bar. That's a bar. I like that. That's a bar. We needed that. And then, so like now we have Lit Happens with Sid.
Yeah.
We kind of talked a little bit about it off camera, but kind of where did this name creativity come from? It confused me a little bit, you know, earlier when we was talking. I'm like, that's a really good creative name. So kind
Yeah.
of walk the audience through, like, where did this name Creativity come from and how it, came up?
So I was just looking, like I literally Googled, like, what's some like book slogans that's kind of out there. So I was just kind of like going through the motion of figuring out. And I was like, I was asking my mom, what about this? What about this? What about this? And so I was like, lit happens with Sid. I even did like graphics of different things, trying to see what looked good, what stuck. And so lit is because it's two meanings. So it's literature, and then my last name is Little. All right, lit happens
good.
with Sid. And then the slogan, like, ish happens. So I'm like,
Yep.
so it's
Yep.
just a mix of different things. And it's different.
It is different.
And I wanted it to stick, so when people see it, they're like, oh, what is this about? So that's where I got it
That
from.
was good. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with with you loving reading books and I was just kind of in that space of literacy, and I didn't think about your last name.
Yeah.
And that's how you brought it all together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then kind of walk us through. So now you've been able to be consistent in this space at Fox 2 News. And have your own segment.
Yeah.
Kind of walk us through the target audience, I guess. Who are you targeting to have on the platform, and who is this audience for? Of course, I don't want it to sound self-explanatory, but I want you to,
Yeah, it's
open up
really
and talk
for
about it a
all
little bit.
age groups. I think at first I was really thinking like, okay, well, how can we focus more on like when it comes to kids? Because I feel like this younger generation nowadays don't read like how we used to.
I don't read,
and
but I need to be better. I need to be better.
We'll get you there.
Yeah.
But I think now like they're so into tablets and video games and stuff,
Yep.
so they're not really taking the time to read.
Yep.
And so that was kind of my premise at first. But then as I started getting into it, I'm kind of like, okay, but you have like, I actually reached out to my first grade teacher, Miss Stofflet, and I was like, thank you for like, really teaching me about chapter books, because now look at where I'm at. And she was like, oh, I'm gonna have to watch you. I'm in a book club. So I was like, older people are in book clubs too. So I really want to do like all age groups, because like you said, a lot of adults or even people in our age groups don't read. And it's not like you got to do it for hours and hours on end. Like even if it's 10 pages a day, 10 pages a week, like just reading
Something you like you said.
And then it's a learning process too, because you're learning new words. If you don't know the word, look it up. And it's just the whole thing. So it's really for all age groups, kids, teens, adults, whoever, older people, just really everybody, every gender, everything's welcome. As long as it's book related, you're good.
Most definitely. And kind of talk a little bit about who you've had on the platform, the past and future collaborations of what people possibly could look out for.
Yeah, so it's been interesting because like when I reach out, people are like, oh my God, like when they see Fox, they're like, oh my, because nobody else is doing it. And like a lot of people, they've done interviews where it's like Facebook Live, Instagram Live, but they've never done it where it's like an actual news station wanting to talk. So I send emails and I'm just kind of like throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. Like I've reached out to I've had Tia Williams. She's like very well known in like the Black romance community. Danielle Allen. I'm trying to get Kennedy Ryan on. I've even had Jess Hilarious on the other weekend.
Yeah.
So that was
what did y'all
interesting.
talk about?
So she has a new book out.
Really?
And it's Till Death Do We Parent, which she talks about like co-parenting, like her with her high school sweetheart, which is her first son's father, and like how their relationship didn't work out, but co-parenting doesn't stop when your kids turn 18, like you're still a parent. So we talked about that, and then she was like, she was doing some stand-up shows, so we kind of chit-chat about that. But it was pretty dope because we just like connected. And even she was like, when you hear about like news people, you think like they're kind of stuck up. She's like, but it was pretty laid back, and dope. I've had authors fly in, which I'm like, oh my God, like you're flying in for the show. Curtis Chin, he's based in LA. I just had Luke, he's an author and a screenwriter for movies. He's based in LA, so he was here. So it's a ton. Like I have JL Seeger, she's another well-known person in like the Black community. She's coming on. Amy Dubois Bennett, she's coming on. She actually made history as being like the first Black female that ran like a major magazine, which was Teen People. And so we're gonna have her on. So it's just a never ending list.
And I think it's interesting too because I think when you talked about when people are, when you're reaching out and then when they're responding, they're kind of having this assumed mind of like, okay, like this is going to be a news reporter, it's going to be a certain type of vibe. But I'm going to be honest, it's like you're doing a really, really good job of owning the professionalism space, but also being able to connect in a very, what word am I looking for? Just in such a way where people
they feel comfortable. And like I tell people, like 'cause I do in person and Zoom. So like if it's Zoom, I have people like, oh my God, like I have anxiety, and I'm like, just think of it as it's recorded, so it's not live. So just think of it like that. But then I'm like, just think of it as two book friends on FaceTime yapping about books. That's really all it is. And I think a lot of times, a lot of people might try to do this, but they don't have the personality for it. And like, you have to be, like, I don't always like to be around people, but when I'm in this space, like, I don't mind talking and yapping. And then I'm like, you just have to be comfortable and a people person to do this kind of thing.
And see, and that's the thing too. I'm a people person, but I've never been a person who loves to talk.
Yeah.
You know, so I knew with having you on and you kind of working at Fox 2 News, I'm like, no, like, this is gonna be a very, very like a good space for us to cross over and connect, but then also talk about strategy as well, about how we go about, you know, having people on the platform, if it makes sense, if it doesn't make sense, just, you know, driving impact. And that's what we're doing right now, you know, just kind of being here in Sidetrack, understanding this is your passion, this is the things that you're doing through Fox 2 News, with having your own segment, but then also coming on a platform and having an authentic conversation around, you know, what's important through a transitional journey. A continuous improvement transitional journey is what I would say.
And then like us being here, like that just shows the importance of like reaching out to the community, because it's always important to support like libraries, but then like independently owned bookstores, because like you get more of like a personal relationship compared to like if you go to Barnes and Noble, unless you're there all the time. And I just feel like that, just like them allowing us to be in this space just shows the importance of why reaching out and having people in the community is so important, no matter what topic you're talking about.
I love that you just broke that down. Yeah, thank you for that. And then one of the last things I'll ask you is just, you know, how can you educate others with, you know, Lit Happens with Sid and just any other passion that you might have when it comes to, you know, some of the things that you love?
Yeah, I would just say like, follow what you want to do. And like that goes back to, you know, like how I transitioned from, you know, being a pre-med major to focusing on journalism. It's like, do what you want to do, because at the end of the day, it's your life. And do what you're passionate about. Like, I'm always busy when it comes to like working 13, 14-hour days, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really feel like work because I'm doing what I love to do. And I have a nice balance between the two. Like, I'm talking about books. I love reading books. Authors send me books before they're even out. So that saves me money from always being at the bookstore. But it's just figure out what you like to do. I think that's the first thing. Figure out what your hobby is, what you like to do, and then go from there. And then like reach out to people that's doing the same thing that you're doing and be like, hey, can you mentor me? Or, hey, how did you get into this? How did you get into that? And I think a lot of times opportunities go missed because they're not reaching out to the resources that's available to them. And it's like, if you talk to somebody for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, you would be amazed at what it just like a little bit of connection could, like you could meet somebody else. It could just, it's a whole thing, connecting, like networking, like we were talking about earlier.
It's a networking is so powerful, but then also at the same time, you got to understand the approaches and the levels to networking. Networking can, I say it all the time in all of my episodes, but networking can be such a surface level thing, but then once you understand what that surface level is, then you have to be very intentional with how you go about those approaches with people and what aligns and what resources are there. So,
and a lot of times you get opportunities not even from a degree you have, but it's just from networking, just because you met somebody or they might know somebody. So just talk to people, even if you don't like talking to people. It's worth like 5-minute conversation. You'd be surprised.
Most definitely. But all in all, Sydnee, thank you for being on the platform.
Thank you for having me.
Was so wonderful for you to be here and for you to coordinate this space with Sidetrack. Thank you to Sidetrack as well. This was great. But I think before we close out, where can the people find you? You know, as far as like how can they get in contact with you, or if they're interested in Lit Happens with Sid, like kind of give us the walk down.
So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Both of those handles are Lit Happens with Sid. I'm verified now, so you know the difference. And then if you have like, if you want to email me, it's Sydnee, SYDNEE.little, LITTLE at Fox.com.
So, good deal. Well, no, I definitely appreciate you for having me, have you on the platform. This is very, very great. And you're doing great. I wanted to give you your kudos. I guess before we close, I wanted to give you your kudos for all of the great stuff that you're doing. I think it's going to be even more stuff that you probably don't even see right now that's going to be in your future.
And the same to you, because like just thinking about like how we used to do dumb stuff in classes when it came to math and everything else, and it's like now look at you, got a whole platform having people on. So, but no, I really appreciate you for having me on. I really do.
Most definitely. Well, hopefully, you know, I think not even hopefully, I think a lot of people will gain a lot of insight, knowledge around this episode. This was really, really good to kind of talk a little bit about why reading is important, a little bit about who you are as a person. But again, this is episode 5, man. Lit Happens with Sid. I'm gonna leave everything where you guys can, follow Sid on all of the social handles. Shout out to Sidetrack. Shout out to Isaiah for shooting all of this stuff, man. This is great. But yeah, man, that's it, and signing out.
Trying to seal a deal just like last week. Trying to run plays and run it up like the mathletes. It's in my DNA to have hope and make a way. Good energy will hit that MJ fade away. Miss me with the hate and now, bruh, not today. Stayed in my lane, did